On today's show, the first December edition of the Locked On Cavs Whip Around is here. The Cavs have 5 games in 7 nights. It is ongoing. We'll talk about the games against Indiana, San Antonio, and Golden State on this Monday edition of the Locked On Cavs Whip Around.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, everybody. My name is Danny Cunningham, and I cover the Cleveland Cavaliers over at my Substack, The Inside Shot. And you are listening to another edition of Locked On Cavs, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in all of America. You can find this show and any other Locked On podcast wherever you get them. That means Apple, that means Spotify, that means anywhere else. And the best way you can help grow this show is by clicking subscribe on whichever podcast platform you prefer. We are also available on YouTube. And if you're watching right now as we get started, do us a favor, hit that thumbs up button for us, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. In today's episode, brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can bet just $5, and if your first $5 bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. Head to FanDuel.com today to get started. Cavs continue a stretch of 5 games in 7 nights tonight in Indiana against the Pacers. Then they take on the Portland Trailblazers on Wednesday. Didn't have the opportunity, unfortunately, over the weekend to connect with Mike Richmond, our host over at Locked On Blazers. Hoping to have him on Wednesday's show, but we'll see if our schedules work out. And then Jeff Garcia from Locked On Spurs stops by. We talk about Friday's matchup between the Cavs and San Antonio before Chuck Walter of Locked On Warriors makes, I believe, his Locked On Cavs debut to talk Cavs and Warriors coming up on Saturday. So before I get to Tony, because, of course, I know everybody loves Tony East here at the Locked On Cavs podcast, please do us a favor. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. It's Apple, it's Spotify. That is anywhere else. And now here's my conversation previewing the Cavs and Pacers with Tony East. And look who's back again. The greatest authority on the Indiana Pacers there is. Tony East joins the show to talk about a streaking Indiana Pacers team that has won 2 straight games. Looks much better than the last time we talked. Tony, what has changed about the Indiana Pacers over the last 2 weeks?
The same group of players has been available for all of the 2 weeks. The Cavs played the Pacers in Cleveland, and that team had fold. They've actually been able to tweak a rotation, not because their whole team is hurt, but because they want to, and they think it could actually help them be better. And they found something with Jay Huff in the starting 5 of late. Isaiah Jackson's been good off the bench. They found something with McConnell and Huff surrounding their big 3, and with having the same group able to actually build off of their successes and tweak stuff off their failures instead of just chasing a health designation every single game for a month, they've been able to actually look competent, even when they lost. Like that Cleveland game, their third quarter was pathetic. The rest of the game was basically dead even. So they've been much better for, I would say, about a week and a half, 2 weeks now. They've won 3 of their last 6 and 2 in a row. We'll see if they can keep it up when they play like actual real opponents this week.
Well, that'll happen tonight when the Cavs are in Indy to take on the Pacers. And you mentioned Jay Huff, and he was somebody that I thought had a pretty good game when the Pacers were in Cleveland a couple of weeks ago, and he's been moved into the starting lineup, bringing Isaiah Jackson off the bench. Why did Rick Carlisle want to make that change, and what has stood out to you about the basketball that Huff has been playing?
Yeah, Huff had a really good game against the Hornets, which a lot of centers do, but he broke out with 20 points, made a bunch of threes, and, that was clear that, that was possible for him. If you can shoot, you can occasionally have a game like that where you just catch fire and there you go. The minutes are there. But he also is now, with Wemby no longer qualifying for league leaderboards, he's first in the NBA in blocks per game. And he's only playing 20 minutes a night. They figured out this zone to keep him around the rim more often. They don't do it all the time when he's out there, but if the matchup dictates it, they will. And so he can really be an impact player on both ends. And so I think the hope was that if he can keep shooting and providing spacing, that would help the Pacers stars to have a little bit more room to operate Siakam stars. Of course, Siakam is, and then there are better players in Nembhard and Mather, and that has worked. The other reason it's worked is Isaiah Jackson has played over 1,000 minutes with TJ McConnell in his career. He's played more with McConnell than Huff has total minutes, period, at all. And I think that chemistry of Jackson with the second unit has also really helped just them have 48 minutes of good center play in a way that they have been chasing all season. So not only is Huff playing well and boosting the starters, but Jackson's been good off the bench. So that rotation balance shift has made them a much more capable group.
So because the Pacers have dealt with so many injuries, they have qualified for what feels like 15 different hardship exceptions, which means that they can sign guys essentially to day contracts before the rest of the NBA is allowed to do so when January rolls around and those become legal. And you did a story about what that challenge is like for those guys. Can you tell us a little bit about what you have learned about guys that are kind of just parachuting into Indy on these 10-day contracts on the hardship exceptions? What was doing that story like?
Yeah, it was funny because like they played in Cleveland, so the Cavs saw this. Garrison Matthews played in that game. And if you're a Cavs fan, you're like, wait, Garrison Matthews is on the Pacers. You're forgiven for having that thought because he had been on the team for one day. And he played 10 minutes. And like they wanted him on the floor to play real minutes. They played the Warriors the first day of November. Jeremiah Robinson Earl signed with the team on a hardship that day. Cody Martin 4 days later, same thing. They play the Nets. He signs that day. And so that is what's different from any other deal is that when you sign a hardship player, it's because you need them. You have 4 guys who've been hurt for a long time and are still going to be hurt for a long time. You don't want them because they're a great fit and you have an open spot, or like you need a 10-day guy that maybe you're getting to look at some young dude. Like you need a guy who can play right away, but the guy you need doesn't know your plays, doesn't know their teammates, right? And so Garrison Matthews comes to Cleveland and he misses all of his shots, and it's like, what can you expect from me? He's been on the team for a day. So it's a fascinating challenge of the need for a player to produce and them being in the worst possible situation to actually produce for their team. That's what makes Robinson Earl a success story for the Pacers. He did produce right away. They kept him past his hardships. Cody Martin and Garrison Matthews likely not getting the same treatment, but you can't sign a player for like a skill need. You can't sign them because you like their potential. You're signing them because they want to play. And so all season I've talked about the Pacers. Here's all these things they've struggled with. Can they get better in this way? And I'm like, at some point it's like, what am I doing? Like they've had 3 players suit up like that who were not on the team for camp or weren't even on any team come November 1st. So that I think is really the story of their season, is how hurt they've been. And you got to give these guys credit when they do well. But I mean, Martin had 1 good game. Matthews only made a shot in 1 of his 4 games. Robinson Earl had some successes. So I think it's possible Pacers Cavs is the first Pacers game without a hardship player on their team since Halloween, right? So
Wow.
It's been that long for them trying to keep a normal rotation on the floor.
Well, what an honor it'll be to be in the building for that if that does happen on Monday night. And I want to rewind back to last year. And this is less about tonight's game between the Cavs and the Pacers and more about where the Cavs are. But last year, the Indiana Pacers got off to a slow start. And we know how the season ended with them going to the finals and losing in Game 7. But I think it's easy to forget at one point the Pacers were 10-15. And you and I have talked about this. I don't remember if it was exactly on this podcast or just in conversations that you and I have had, because we do happen to be friends away from when the mics are in our face. But they were 10-15. They didn't advance to the knockout stage in the NBA Cup, and they got the break, right? Where you have those 2 additional games added. The Cavs just had games between themselves and the Wizards and the Charlotte Hornets added to their schedule, but you basically get 2 games in 9 days, which is a big change up from how the rest of the season goes. How did that stretch change the season for the Pacers last year? Because I do think that's something the Cavs are very much looking forward to.
Yeah, it was huge for them in every way. And the part that might directly relate to the Cavs a little bit, not perfectly, is that the Pacers got a ton of guys back from injury right around then. Aaron Nesmith returned about a couple weeks later. Ben Shepherd came back at that time. Andrew Nembhard came back at that time. One other guy that I can't remember. So one thing is literally like they had time to heal. And it's not necessarily even players coming back, but it's players who have been dealing with this or that thing, but have been forced to play because the team is so hurt, can get right in that time, right? They're only playing 2 games in X amount of time. Perfect. They can hit the floor 100% for those games. And then for the Pacers, the big thing for them was, as they were floundering early in the season, and I think the reason you and Cavs fans maybe know about this is one reason the Pacers generally, their ethos was so confident in that series was they had like the same win percentage as the Cavs basically from that break to the end of the season because they started to play so well at that time. So it was a big talking point that like a 60-game sample of the Pacers was still really good. They had practice time, and you know this, but like people think teams practice all the time, and like I bet the Pacers and Cavs have a combined 5 practices since the first day of the regular season, if that, right? You just don't have time to do it, and all of a sudden you are gifted with the NBA Cup break. Like you can have as many as you've had the whole season in 10 days, right? And so you can actually iron out stuff that is befalling you in whatever way. And in the Pacers case last year, they got, like the Cavs right now, 2 easy games. They played Philly and then the Pelicans at home. And so it's like, not only can you practice, you can immediately see how it can work when you're playing a terrible team on the floor, right? And the Pacers got gifted 2 pretty easy games too. They got the other Wizards game from the Cup rescheduling. So there's just a lot of benefits from it, especially if your record doesn't look as good as your team quality in the Cup. And that did happen to the Cavs. They went 2-2, and they're better than that. So your question is valid. That could help the Cavs. It helped the Pacers last year, but every team will hope that happens to them, right? But I think the Cavs situation does quite align with what the Pacers had last year.
Right. And even looking back to last year, because the Cavs, for as good as they were, they went 2-2 in the NBA Cup. Group stage games didn't advance. They had that same break, and they went on a 12-game winning streak, one of their 3 winning streaks of greater than 10 games, which actually ended with that loss in Cleveland against the Pacers, where Tyrese Halliburton got hurt in that game, if you think back to that. So I do think it is something that the Cavs are certainly looking forward to after this stretch of 5 games in 7 nights, which started yesterday with a game against the Boston Celtics and continues tonight in Indiana against the Pacers. If you want more on the Indiana Pacers, check out Tony over at Locked On Pacers, or check out his new venture, Circle City Spin. It is one of the best. I'm a paying subscriber, and I would recommend that you become one as well. Tony, thanks so much for the time, man.
Yeah. Woohoo.
Big thanks to Tony East for stopping by, and we'll get to our conversation with Jeff Garcia in just a minute. But first, this episode brought to you by PrizePicks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports. Bowl games, big basketball matchup, playoff pushes, right? It's all happening at once. And while we are all making choices every single day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is with PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and available in 45 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. PrizePicks has also added an extra layer of excitement to the holiday sports schedule, because with so much going on, there's an opportunity for you to win. You can create a lineup that takes less than a minute, and the app makes the whole process smooth and simple to handle. Plus, their early payout feature is a great bonus. When your lineup starts strong, you may get the option to cash out early and take home some sweet winnings. So download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA, that is LOCKEDONNBA, to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. For the first time this year, the Cavs taking on the San Antonio Spurs. Game is at home on Friday. Jeff Garcia from Locked On Spurs going to chat with us here as the Cavs look at taking on a Spurs team that probably won't have Victor Wembanyama. I know he's scheduled to be reevaluated around the time of this game, which tells me he's probably not going to play in this game. But San Antonio got off to a great start with Wemby, and he's been gone for, I think, 2 or 3 weeks at this point. They're still 13-5. Jeff, how have they not only stayed afloat, but continue to be pretty good without Wemby?
You're seeing everybody step up, from Julian Champagnie, Devin Vassell, De'Aaron Fox finally get into a rhythm and putting it all together. And I think the main thing has nothing to do with X's and O's, although that's very important. But I just think this young team is starting to show the next phase in their rebuild process is maturing on the court. I've been seeing a lot of mature basketball of late from the silver and black, finding the open man, finding the better shot, managing time better. Those little things are starting to add up as this young team is. Look, I've been saying they're out of the rebuild. They're completely out of it. They're done. Right. But as far, if you're looking for a next phase, I think the maturity, you're seeing that before our eyes happening. Now, the good news is that, yes, Victor will be back. But what's even more impressive, and it's good news for Spurs fans, is they're beating teams that you wouldn't think they would beat without their main weapons, Wemby and Castle. They beat Denver. I got to be honest with you, I did not see that coming. I did not. I thought Denver was going to mop the floor with them. And I thought that was going to happen in the second half. And it didn't. Spurs got the W. You're seeing them be just competitive with other teams and handling wins. I'll tell you a good example. At home versus Atlanta. Atlanta was coming into that game hot, red hot. Statistically, I was like, oh my goodness. I mean, Spurs are in for a dogfight. I mean, I'm thinking Atlanta could win. And Atlanta outshot them, cooked them from the 3-point line, out-rebounded them, but yet the Spurs managed to find a way, again, playing smart basketball. And again, I go back to guys stepping up. It is not just the other components, such as I mentioned, Vassell, Fox, and Champagny. You've seen guys like David Jones Garcia, a guy they found in the summer league, step up in big time games. Young guys like Carter Bryant. So right now you're seeing a collective effort from the Spurs without Wemby. What makes this Spurs team so scary is that you mentioned they don't have Wemby right now. They don't have Castle right now. When those two guys come back, forget about it. Depth is shining as well. Devin Vassell talked about that after the recent win versus Denver, saying just how deep this team is. You can almost go 1 through 5 and see the Spurs saying, yep, they got backup guys for this guy. Yep. They got, I mean, think about this too. Their bench consists of Keldon Johnson, NBA vet. You know, you got another guy off the bench, Luke Cornett, guy who's won a title, you know, with Boston. He's been there with the Knicks. And the list goes on and on. I mean, this team has depth at almost every spot. Dylan Harper's back, the young rookie. You know, he's finally getting his game legs back after being out for a while with injury. Had 11 points in the last game. So all in all, from depth, basketball maturity, and guys stepping up, that's how they're doing it without Wemby.
So as they continue to navigate without not only Wemby, but without Stephon Castle, I am curious, what is the latest on when those guys could be back from their injuries?
Well, the Spurs are going to spur. I'm going to tell you that much. You know, the doctors can say, oh, he can be back in a week. The Spurs will tack on 2 more weeks, you know, just because they want to be 100% sure. No, and I'm starting to think, I think we're going to be talking about this soon on Locked On Spurs. I wonder moving forward if this is going to be life with Wemby as long as he's a Spur. Like, he's never going to play 82 games. They're going to sit him out for an extended period just because of his body makeup, just because of, you know, we know historically about guys that size don't last long in the league. So I'm starting to think that could be the sign of life without Wemby. But going back to your question, you know, it's still out there. You know, the Spurs, you know, you mentioned maybe around the Cavs game, maybe. So Castle, I think Castle should be back sooner. I think I would not be surprised if Castle's back before the Cavs game, which should not be good for you guys, but nevertheless, yeah. But I wouldn't. Man, as far as Wemby's concerned, he's their franchise guy. He's the one they're building everything around. So, would not be surprised if he's not in uniform versus the Cavs. And I'm glad they're taking on the Cavs team, because I think another needed ingredient in the Spurs, you know, rise to the top again is playing against solid teams. Your Cavs are one of them, and hopefully it'll be a good fight.
We will certainly see when that rolls around this weekend. But one of the other guys I wanted to ask about is Dylan Harper. And I know that he's missed time with injury as well. He's played 8 games so far as a rookie, but a very heralded guy that, you know, I don't necessarily think the San Antonio Spurs were expecting to get the lottery luck they got where they picked number 2 overall. Again. But in 8 games that he has played, and again, because he missed really, I think it was like 3.5 weeks. So maybe this is a little hard to judge. What you thought of his rookie campaign so far?
It's good. It's good. I'm not gonna say it's eye popping, but it's definitely good. And the trajectory where he's going is definitely bringing the smiles across Spurs fans' faces. I look at the numbers. I went to Synergy Sports recently and said, well, you know, how was he doing before the injury? And mind you, you know, there was a very, very small sample size, about 5-6 games before he got hurt. And obviously going downhill in transition, the guy's just a beast. You know, Synergy Sports had him rated as an excellent transitional player on offense. But get this, when it came to the half court, they rated him poor. He's not that really good in the half court situation. But again, small sample size, you know, it's really hard to lean on that, considering he got hurt. I think he still needs work. The 3-shot definitely needs work. That was what coming into the league. That's what his thing was. You know, can he shoot the long ball? He can hit it from time to time, but so far nothing consistent. But I love his aggressiveness. I love his ability to attack the rim, just create shoot open shot situations for his teammates. You're seeing his teammates benefit from that, from Julian Champagny to Harrison Barnes, who, by the way, gets a lot of credit this season. I don't know if you've seen what HB is doing. Did he find them? I mean, seriously, did he hop in a time machine and meet up with Marty McFly and Doc, and they figured it, you know, go back to get, you know, his young legs back? Because he's playing like back in his peak in Golden State days. He's I mean, I dare anybody right now, go look at his shot chart right now Just go look at it, and your mouth will be like, wait, Harrison Barnes is doing that. He's just been great glue guy for the Spurs team. Good with the guys in the locker room, good with the guys on the court. The best example I ever share everybody with HB Harrison Barnes was there was one time there was a game and the Spurs were whooping butt. They were destroying it. I forget the team it was, and it was out of control. Spurs were easy going to win, and Keldon Johnson with seconds left does a dunk. Screams in the crowd, rattles the rim, and everything. Celebration time, right? Yeah, no. Final buzzer goes off. Harrison Barnes pulls him in center court and kind of gives him the business, telling him how you never ever should do that ever again.
Right. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, remember that? Yeah. So that's the type of much needed ingredients that Barnes is giving this young Spurs team. And you're seeing that pay out. You're seeing that pay out this year. I mean, seriously, I look up and down this roster. Am I surprised they're at this record? Yes, because they're doing it without Wemby, which makes me think, could they really have let fewer losses if Castle and Wemby were playing right now? I don't know. I mean, Phoenix seems to do something to them. I don't know what they're doing to them, but every time they play the Suns, they get wrecked. So there's 2 losses right there. The Golden State game, I think the pair of losses to Golden State, that baseball situation they had, the game that gave back-to-back-ish, that was just basketball maturity times 100. That was the Spurs. They may have got into college, but they're seeing like the PhD, the master level classes come out, and they just taught them lessons. And I think those lessons early are going to help this young team grow. So, but like the Spurs, they're in the cup quarterfinals. That's good for them. I think they're seeing it as a big step forward. Mitch Johnson talked about that afterwards, after they qualified for it, that he goes, oh, they're all talking about it in the locker room right now. Apparently he goes, I don't know much about it, but apparently it's a big thing. We want it. So, but every little positive step in any direction for this young team is good. I still need to see how they come together with the dog days of the NBA ahead of us. I know OKC just wrecks everybody nowadays, but even if they were to curb stomp the Spurs, I still need to see that just so they can learn, things like that. There's value to losses like that. But my goodness, there was a report during the draft when the Spurs got the number 2 pick that some Spurs staffer may have been the president or something. Well, before Popovich became president, they said, oh, the Spurs are back. And man, they look like they are back.
They have been very good so far this year. And I will get you out of here with this. Given that Wemby and Stephon Castle and even Dylan Harper to a lesser extent have all missed time, and the Spurs are still 13-5, how have you had to readjust your expectations for what this team could be compared to what they were before the season started?
I think if any readjustment I had to take as far as expectation is still keep them kind of low, not jump in the bandwagon and think NBA conference finals, here we come. Nothing like that. Excuse me. I think a part of me says, okay, and look, I'm not the only one who admits it. Even Wemby admitted it. Their schedule's been a little soft. It's been a little soft. It hasn't really been major heavy hitters on their schedule, but now they're getting into that part of their schedule. They got tested versus Phoenix. They lost, but then they go to Denver and they win, and as of this recording, they had Minnesota on deck. So we'll see. I'm keeping them moderate right now as high. I think this is definitely a playoff bound team. I believe they can get between somewhere to 4 and 5, because it feels like, I know you give your thoughts on this. It feels like the West is kind of top heavy and the bottom is kind of weakish. You're just Denver, Minnesota, and OKC, and I guess throwing Houston in there. But after that, I mean, the 4 spot, it seems to be wide open. 4 to 6 seems to be wide open. Could it be the Spurs? Sure. Could it be the Lakers? Absolutely. Who else is out there? But it just feels like it's kind of a toss-up at that point. I don't want the Spurs to make the play-in, because I think they're better than the play-in tournament. So I'm keeping my expectation moderate. I'm expecting them somewhere between 4 and 5. I'm not expecting them 1, 2, or 3 at 4, even at that, unless Houston loses some player on their roster. But I'm keeping them kind of in the bottom portion, that 5 through 6 area around there, 4, 5, 6. I think they can definitely get into that. And that would be a huge step forward for this young team. I mean, they went from 20 something games win last year to, I mean, that's a 20 plus game turnaround. That's huge. So, but Spurs fans are already making parade plans already, which I think is ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm not sure that a parade's going to be taking place in
Yeah.
June, although I wouldn't be surprised if parades are taking place in San Antonio in a few Junes from now,
for sure
given this young core, given Victor Wembanyama and how good they seem to be right now. They've certainly been a fun story to watch, and as soon as Wemby gets back, they will continue to be even more fun. But Jeff, thank you so much for the time, man. Can't wait to see Cavs and Spurs this weekend.
Anytime.
Big thanks to Jeff Garcia for stopping by. Chuck Walter coming up in a second. But first, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. I know that's what it felt like watching the Browns yesterday. And that's what makes betting live with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment can be yours. Live betting the best when the game starts to shift too. Maybe you sense a comeback coming on. Maybe you sense a team going to pull away. If you've got a feel like that, FanDuel is the place to go. Receiver could get hot. Defense could tighten up. Or if the momentum might flip after a big turnover, FanDuel can let you jump into that moment. One of the things that I've been keeping a very, very close eye on with FanDuel lately is the college football playoff odds. I'm talking who's going to make it, who's not going to make it. So as I'm recording this, 2:30 in the afternoon on Sunday. The thing that I like, the team I think might sneak in there, is James Madison. They're currently, as of this recording, plus 138 to make the college football playoff. A group of 5 team is going to get in, maybe 2 of them. And I like James Madison to be that team, or maybe there will be 2. And if there are 2, you will feel much better about things because the ACC is a dumpster fire and they might not get a single team in. So if you want to bet on that, or maybe Monday Night Football tonight, FanDuel is the place to go. And if you want to be in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com. That is FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long with FanDuel. FanDuel, the game moves fast and so can you. And now we bring in Chuck Walters, host of Locked On Warriors, for the first of 2 matchups between the Cavs and the Warriors. I think these 2 teams have played in some big games before. Not too sure about that, but Golden State comes to town with a team that I think is in a similar position to the Cavs. They're a little bit older right now than the Cavs are, certainly, but I do think it's fair to say they have underachieved so far to begin this season. So I'll just kind of start with this, Chuck. What has the first quarter of the season for the Golden State Warriors been like so far?
Turbulent. A roller coaster ride. I think it's like a Cedar Point, one of those, that goes way up. You shoot 70 miles per hour out of the gate, like they did with a win over the Lakers, over the Nuggets. You kind of get to the top of that peak. You think you're going to keep rolling after you take down the Clippers, and then it's a Giannis-less loss to the Bucks, a loss to the Pacers, their first of the season, first win, I guess, for the Indiana Pacers. And from there, it's just been kind of hot and cold. They turned it up in San Antonio with 2 wins. Curry went for 46 and 49. They've beaten most of the teams they should beat. They took down Phoenix before Phoenix actually looked good. They beat Memphis. They've beaten New Orleans. But thus far, it's been a lot of back-to-backs. It's been a lot of road trips. Curry's currently out with a contusion of his quad, so that'll be a week. Jonathan Kuminga returns. There's just a lot of moving parts, man. It's as simple as that. But they're average. They're 10-10.
They are certainly, I think, average right now, and they're a team that I would imagine expects to play better basketball as the season rolls along. But you mentioned a couple of names that I want to follow up on, and one of them is Jonathan Kuminga, because he's a name that I think a lot of people in the NBA got familiar with this summer. He had a very lengthy restricted free agency that I believe did bleed into training camp, and he is somebody that a lot of people imagine are going to see the Warriors move on from. I know a certain Warriors reporter I follow has basically been counting down the days until January 15th, which is the date that Kuminga becomes trade eligible after signing the offer from the Warriors at the end of this summer, I guess into this fall. But what has the Jonathan Kuminga experience been like throughout the first 20 games of the season?
Honestly, when he's played better than the Kuminga experience from the past, and last year being one of the worst years in the experience where, you thought he was going to get handed the keys. He did get handed the keys from not only Steve Kerr, but Draymond, who went to the bench for the first time in how long since, David Lee, since he took that spot way back in the day. And it lasted like a week, and then Kuminga hurts his ankle, and then he comes back and they kind of incorporate him for 18, 20 minutes. In the last game of the season against the Clippers in a must win to avoid the play-in, he was a DNP, and then he gets the DNPs against the Rockets. But this season got off to a great start. It was really focused on his passing, on his facilitating, and it didn't seem like he was really hunting shots by any means. And he was getting stat lines of, 16 points that he'd roll out of bed and score. He'd have 8 assists. He'd have 7 rebounds. He's the team's leading rebounder. He showed a lot of promise in the first couple weeks, and I think the recency bias of him just being hurt has made this season seem a lot worse than it's been. But at the same time, a week before he was hurt, he was starting to regress a little bit. He was taking more threes. He was missing more threes. That mid-range that had been so good to start the season wasn't dropping. But the rebounding was still there. The passing is much improved. The willing passing is much improved. And I would say overall, aside from the injuries, it's been a pretty decent start for Kuminga.
Speaking of injuries, and another guy that you mentioned, Steph Curry, who has that quad contusion that I believe was suffered in a game against the Houston Rockets a few days back. And a week is the time frame, but those can kind of be fuzzy. By the time the Warriors get to Cleveland, which I believe is in the middle of a road trip on the East Coast for them, do you expect him to be back? Like, what do you think this absence is going to look like?
Well, the absence has to look like Jonathan Kuminga kind of being handed the keys. It's him and Jimmy Butler. What you saw in the series last year against Minnesota, where they came close in a game or two, felt like they had one, but they weren't able to take any of those 4 to allow Steph to return. But they were at least competitive in some of those games, and that's what they need to be, because without Curry on the floor, it has not been good whatsoever. Kuminga, and typically it hasn't even been Butler, because Butler and Curry have sat, together this year, it feels like. But Kuminga, Moody, Will Richard, Pajimski, the rest of the guys, they weren't able to beat Sacramento. Obviously, they weren't able to beat Denver without Steph Curry on the floor. It looked a lot worse than it did when Curry was on the floor, and the Warriors won that game. And they just need him to continue to improve either his trade value or improve his stand on this team with the head coach, Steve Kerr, with the teammates. And that's what I'm looking forward to most, is like, can he be the dude? Because he was kind of the dude in last year's playoffs. I know it didn't lead to any wins, but he was putting up damn near 30 points a game.
One of the other storylines, which always tends to be a storyline surrounding this guy, is Jimmy Butler. And there's been, I think, some tension. It's fair to say he has made some comments about teammates. He made comments the other night after the Warriors fell to 10-10, talking about how they're just a very average basketball team. Has there been a sort of tension surrounding him? What do you think, if anything, is different about Jimmy doing this type of thing this time versus doing it in Miami or Minnesota or Philadelphia or Chicago? Because we've seen this everywhere he's been.
Yeah, I mean, he's the truth teller, right? He came out in Minnesota and told it how it was with guys like Wiggins and Cat that weren't necessarily giving it their all during that scrimmage years ago. And he's being a truth teller right now, saying the team's not boxing out, saying that the team can't rely on Steph Curry to go Batman every single night and that they have to pick up the slack. And I feel like Jimmy, for the most part, has done his job. The issue is he's getting paid like one of the best. He's getting paid like a Giannis, like a Jokic, like an SGA, and he's just not that. I mean, he's a good player. He's a fringe all-star, and he's a guy that helps your team. They just overpaid for him, and because of that, he's never going to meet those expectations. But when it comes down to it, Jimmy's someone that'll give you 18 to 20 just about every single night, it feels like. Sometimes wish he would take it a little bit more, but gets to his spots. He's a well-rounded player. And if there's been any gripes on Jimmy Butler this season, it's been, honestly, overall the defense, and hasn't really had to do with, calling out the teammates, anything like that, because it hasn't just been him. It's been Kerr, it's been Draymond, it's been Jimmy, Steph, everyone. There's just been kind of a disconnect with this young second timeline that is clearly not going to be their own timeline. They're role players, and the old guys that are going for another championship.
You mentioned championship, and at 10-10, a quarter of the way through the season, it's, I think, a fair time to start reevaluating expectations for teams and just like what a realistic thing looks like. And this is sort of a two-parter, but what did you think of this team before the season, and where do you think their ceiling is right now?
I felt pretty good before the season, just based off the continuation of last year. You've seen so many rosters with turnover to some degree. And one of the most exciting things about the Warriors were they were going in with all the good mojo. Like Buddy and Jimmy had this connection, not only on the floor, but off the floor. They're like best friends. And Buddy was playing his best basketball in the playoffs, putting up 34. And then at game 7 against Houston, knocking down 9 threes. Pajimski was playing better, but then kind of regressed in the playoffs. But there were 2 injuries that he had to get surgery on. So you kind of pointed to that. Moses Moody struggled in the playoffs, but he had a UCL injury. So you kind of pointed to that. You have Kuminga as this asset that either he works out or he is very tradable. So, okay, Post is a year older. Guy Santos is a year older. I mean, not sexy names by any means, but you would think that the team would get better. And they were 23-8, I believe was the number last year after Jimmy arrived. And to lose 8 games in 31 as compared to 10 and 20, it has not been the start to the season that I expected. And reevaluating things right now just looks like top to bottom that they're not good enough. Now, are they good enough to win a playoff series? Sure. Are they good enough to hang around with some teams? They got Steph Curry. When you got number 30, you got a chance. But I do think they need to get better. And I'm wondering if the front office thinks the same thing and if they make any drastic moves come deadline.
I think they'll be an interesting team to follow as we get closer to trade deadline, certainly when that Jonathan Kuminga contract becomes tradable. If you want more Warriors content, make sure you check out Chuck Waltert over there at Locked On Warriors. Also check him out with his NBA After Dark over on YouTube and on TikTok as well. Thanks so much for the time, Chuck.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Big thanks to Tony. Big thanks to Jeff. Big thanks to Chuck for all stopping by. Very much appreciate you too for making this edition of Locked On Cavs your first or maybe even second listen of the day after talking about whatever happened, because I'm recording this prior to the Cavs game against the Boston Celtics on Sunday. I have no idea what's going to happen in that game yet, but by the time you are listening to this, I will already have it covered at Locked On Cavs first thing Monday morning. And of course, I will be back first thing tomorrow morning from Indianapolis, talking about the Cavs and Pacers tonight, second game of a back-to-back. So please make sure you keep it locked in right here at Locked On Cavs. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts. It's Apple, that's Spotify, that is anywhere else. Give us a 5-star rating, leave us a nice review, be a friend, tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. And if you're watching on YouTube as we get out of here, do us a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for us, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. I'll be back tomorrow talking more about the Cleveland Cavaliers.